I canceled your scholarship. We're sending Kel Este to Stanford instead. You'll survive. Maybe try waitressing. Those were the exact words my stepfather said the week before I was supposed to start college. He didn't even look up from his coffee when he said it. Just flipped the page of his newspaper, like he hadn't just ripped my entire future out from under me. My name is Alina Cross. I'm 28 now, but that day still burns in my memory, like it happened this morning. I had just graduated valedictorian, won a partial scholarship to a top business school, and was working double shifts at a local diner to cover the rest. Everything was lining up, until Henry Delacroix, my charming, narcissistic, billionaire stepfather, decided his real daughter deserved better. Celeste, his daughter from his first marriage, had mediocre grades and zero ambition. But she was beautiful, polished, and born into money. Everything Henry admired. He called her CEO material while mocking me for my work uniform. My mom? She just stood there, silent as always, her eyes flicking between us and the floor. I knew better than to expect her to stand up for me. Henry always made it clear that I was an outsider. I wasn't a Delacroix by blood, and that meant I didn't matter. He married my mom when I was 12, moved us into his estate, and slowly erased every piece of my old life. By the time I turned 18, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. My dreams didn't fit into his version of success, and the minute I started to rise above the station he assigned me, he cut me down. He didn't just cancel my scholarship, he made sure I had no way to afford school. He froze the joint account my mom had set up for my tuition, told the financial aid office I was no longer under his care, and laughed when I begged him to reconsider. I remember standing in the marble foyer of his mansion, holding the acceptance letter in one hand and a crumpled apron in the other, feeling like the air had been sucked from my lungs. So, I did the only thing I could. I went back to the diner. I waited tables 6 days a week, took night classes at a community college, and poured every ounce of rage and humiliation into building something of my own. I started a small business consulting on logistics for restaurants and local cafes. It was laughable at first, just spreadsheets, supplier lists, and delivery routes. But I kept at it. I studied supply chains, learned coding, built an app. One client turned into 5, then 10. Within 5 years, I'd founded SageLink, a supply chain optimization platform powered by AI, designed specifically for food service. I ran everything under a pseudonym, Alina Ward, to make sure no one in my stepfather's orbit would recognize me. I didn't want them to see me coming, and they didn't. As of this morning, Delacroix Foods, the elite gourmet food conglomerate Henry had spent 30 years building, has been acquired by SageLink through a complex shell merger. The paperwork is signed. The sale is final. He has no idea who the buyer really is. I'm not just crashing his company anniversary gala tonight. I'm walking in as the shadow owner of his empire. He thinks the buyer is some Silicon Valley firm looking for strategic partnerships. What he doesn't know is that the girl he shoved aside, the one he said would never be more than a waitress, now owns everything he built. And tomorrow, I'm walking into his boardroom. But first, there's a party to attend. And when Celeste raises her glass to toast the future of Delacroix Foods, she'll have no idea she's toasting me. I stood outside the Delacroix Towers ballroom, staring at my reflection in the glass doors. For a moment, I hesitated. It was surreal, walking into the heart of the empire that once pushed me out, now holding its fate in my hands. Inside, champagne flowed, string music played softly, and the city's elite mingled beneath golden chandeliers. The 40th anniversary gala of Delacroix Foods was in full swing. Everyone here had no idea that by morning, the name on their paycheck would change. And certainly not to mine. I stepped in, all calm composure on the outside, but my heart was pounding like war drums. I wasn't here to show off. I was here to witness the final chapter of a story that started the day my stepfather told me I was disposable. The first face I saw was Celeste. She stood at the center of the crowd, in a floor-length champagne dress, laughing too loudly, her voice ringing with the kind of confidence only the coddled could afford. When our eyes met, her smile faltered for half a second, just long enough for me to know she recognized me, but not long enough to care. "Alina!" she called out, the kind of tone you'd use on someone you vaguely remembered from high school. "Oh my God, you're still in the city?" Still, as if I'd been left behind. Before I could answer, Henry appeared at her side, in a perfectly tailored tuxedo and a self-satisfied smirk that hadn't changed in 10 years. "Well, if it isn't our little waitress," he said, swirling his glass. "Did someone misplace a serving tray, or are you here to refill drinks?" There were chuckles around us. It took everything in me not to react. Not yet. "I'm just here to celebrate," I said evenly, forcing a polite smile. 40 years is a big milestone. "Indeed it is," he said, turning back to the crowd. "And what a legacy we're building. My daughter Celeste is preparing to take the reins. She'll be the youngest VP in company history." Celeste beamed. I could practically hear the trust fund growing. "Of course," Henry added with a wink toward me. "Some of us aim higher than coffee refills." There it was again. That condescension, the need to belittle, to remind me of my place. Only, my place had changed. I walked away before I could say something too soon. I wasn't here for a fight, I was here for the show. Near the back of the ballroom, I found a small table near the bar and checked my phone. A message from my legal team lit up the screen. "All transition documents signed. Transfer complete. You officially own 51% controlling interest." I stared at those words for a long moment, then let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I was no longer the girl begging for tuition money. I was the CEO they didn't see coming. Then, something caught my eye. Across the ballroom, Henry was standing on the stage now, mic in hand, ready to make his big speech. Guests gathered around. I drifted closer, just enough to hear. "I want to take a moment to recognize someone special," he said, placing a hand on Celeste's shoulder. "She's the future of Delacroix. Brilliant, bold, and beautiful. Everything a leader should be. She's already working on our next strategic move, a tech partnership that will double our profits. She's earned this." The crowd clapped. "And," he continued, "in honor of her upcoming promotion, we've decided to name the company's new innovation lab, the Celeste Center." The applause was deafening. I felt something twist inside me. Not jealousy, not bitterness. It was the bitter sting of recognition. This man would always praise beauty over brains, loyalty over leadership, and privilege over potential. And yet, tomorrow morning, he'd be working for me. I took one last sip of champagne, set the glass down, and walked out of the ballroom without another word. Let them have their night. They had no idea it was their last. Back in my car, my phone buzzed again. A message from my lawyer. "Press release drafted. Do you want to include your name or keep the CEO anonymous for now?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. But before I could answer, another message popped up. From Celeste. "Hey, weird seeing you tonight. Dad said something about you coming by the office tomorrow. Not sure why. Let me know?" I smiled. Let her wonder. Tomorrow, the truth drops. And when it does, they won't just lose control. They'll realize they never had it to begin with. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my apartment. No, my penthouse, watching the city shimmer below as I rehearsed every word I was going to say. My fingers ran along the edge of the leather folder that held the acquisition documents. They were heavy in my hands, heavier than paper had any right to be. 10 years of humiliation, sacrifice, and silence bound into a single packet with my signature at the bottom. By 8:30 a.m., the black town car pulled up to the curb. Marcus, my COO, greeted me with his usual calm. "You sure about this?" he asked as I stepped in. "I've never been more sure of anything." The drive to Delacroix HQ felt like the slow climb of a roller coaster, the quiet before the drop. I stared out the window, remembering the last time I'd been inside that building. I was 18, standing in the lobby, crying as security escorted me out after Henry accused me of trespassing when I tried to ask him for help one last time. Now I had a keycard. Security buzzed me in without question. They didn't recognize me, of course. I wasn't dressed in diner khakis anymore. I wore a tailored navy suit, heels that clicked with authority, and confidence I had earned one brutal step at a time. We stepped into the executive boardroom. The smell hit me first. Expensive cologne, polished wood, and ego. Henry sat at the head of the table, flanked by Celeste and 6 board members. They barely glanced at me when I entered. To them, I was just another face from some faceless tech firm. Celeste didn't even blink. Henry stood to greet Marcus. "You must be the man behind SageLink," he said, extending a hand. "We're thrilled about this partnership." Marcus returned the handshake with a smile, then gestured to me. "And this is Alina Ward, our founder and CEO." Henry's smile froze. Celeste looked up, confused. "Wait, what?" she said. I stepped forward, placing the folder in front of Henry. "I'm here because this isn't a partnership," I said calmly. "As of 9 a.m., SageLink has completed the acquisition of Delacroix Foods." The room went silent. Henry stared at me, blinking slowly. Then he laughed, one of those dismissive, forced laughs people use when they're trying to regain control. "That's impossible. We were negotiating a merger." "No," I corrected. "You were negotiating with a holding company we own. The paperwork is done. You signed away 51% of your company without knowing who was behind it." His face turned pale. Celeste shot to her feet. "This is a joke. This isn't real. You can't just walk in here and—" "I can," I said, sliding the legal documents across the table. "And I did." She flipped through the pages frantically. Her voice started to shake. This says you're the majority shareholder, that you're replacing the executive board." I nodded. "Effective immediately, you're both relieved of your positions. You may stay on in advisory roles, unpaid of course, while we restructure." Henry stood now too, his voice rising. "You lied to us. You manipulated this entire thing." "No," I said, holding his gaze. "I built something real while you were too busy congratulating yourselves for being born rich." Celeste's hands trembled as she flipped to the final page. "Wait. This signature, this is Mom's." I turned to her. "Yes. 3 years ago, before she passed, she signed over her remaining shares in trust to me. She never told you because she knew you'd try to take it." Henry looked like he'd been punched. "That's not possible. She would never." "She did," I interrupted. "She was tired of watching you destroy people you couldn't control. So she gave me the one thing you thought I'd never have. Leverage." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Celeste whispered, barely audible, "You bought our lives." I leaned in, voice steady. Number I reclaimed mine. "Comment the number 3 if you want to see how Celeste will pay for this." I expected resistance. I expected denial. But what I didn't expect was silence. For a full 30 seconds after I laid the truth on the table, no one in the Delacroix boardroom moved. The air was thick with disbelief, shame, and panic. Henry gripped the edge of the conference table like he needed it to stay upright. Celeste was frozen, her face drained of color as she stared at the contract her own mother had signed. I broke the silence. "As of this morning, all department heads now report to SageLink leadership. An internal audit begins today. All upper-level expenses and executive privileges are temporarily frozen." Henry exploded. "You can't just come in here and tear everything down. I built this company with my own 2 hands." I stared him down. "You built this company on family money and exploitation. You didn't even innovate, Henry. You just bought up smaller companies and took credit for their work." His voice cracked. "This is a betrayal. You're doing this out of spite." "No," I said, standing. "I'm doing this out of necessity." I turned to the board members, who'd remained mostly silent. "This company has bled talent for years because of outdated leadership and nepotism. That ends today. We're restructuring, rebranding, and rebuilding, starting now." One board member, a woman named Kendra, who'd been with the company for decades, spoke quietly. "She's not wrong." Henry shot her a glare, but his fire was dying. Celeste finally found her voice. You've made your point. You've embarrassed us. You've won. But you'll regret this. Running a company this size isn't some tech startup game. You'll drown. I almost laughed. SageLink generates more annual revenue than Delacroix Foods. The difference? We don't burn half of it on champagne and nepotism. I handed each board member a sealed envelope. Inside, you'll find your new compensation packages and department objectives. Those who stay will help build the future. Those who don't are free to leave. Henry didn't open his. I won't work for you, he said coldly. I smiled. You won't have to. Your retirement package was already filed by Celeste. His head snapped toward her. What? Celeste blinked, eyes wide. I didn't. Oh, you did, I said, voice sharp now. 2 months ago, in preparation for your takeover. Your signature is right here. I slid another document across the table. You drafted it yourself. You just never imagined someone else would execute it first. Celeste's hands shook as she read the paper. I never meant. This was for next year, Dad. I swear. Henry's face turned red. You plan to push me out? She tried to speak, but he cut her off. After everything I gave you? After I gave you this company over her? He pointed at me like I was dirt, like he couldn't even say my name. You said I wasn't family, I reminded him quietly. Now neither of you have a company. Marcus walked in with a stack of printed press releases. New York Times exclusive goes live in 10 minutes. Would you like to issue the employee memo personally? I nodded. Bring them all to the atrium. As the room emptied, Celeste turned to me one last time. You've ruined us. No, I said, calm and unwavering. You ruined yourselves. I just took back what you never deserved. And just when I thought it was over, just when I thought the final blow had landed, my phone buzzed again. It was an internal alert from legal. Urgent! Whistleblower report received. Evidence of embezzlement found in Delacroix executive accounts. Celeste listed as primary beneficiary. I looked up slowly. She saw my expression change. What? She whispered. I held up my phone. You might want to call a lawyer. The news broke before lunch. Delacroix Foods rocked by internal scandal. Embezzlement probe targets former heiress Celeste Delacroix. By the time I stepped onto the main stage in the atrium, every employee in the building had already read the headline. Some were whispering. Others just stared. I didn't need to raise my voice when I spoke. The weight of the truth carried every word. I introduced myself for the first time publicly as Alina Ward, founder and CEO of SageLink, and now the majority owner of Delacroix Foods. I told them about our plan to revamp the company's broken culture, to stop the rot from the top and rebuild from the roots, to prioritize innovation, not image, hard work, not last names. And then, I told them the truth about how I got here. I didn't say Henry's name. I didn't need to. Everyone knew. I simply said this. 10 years ago, I was told I wasn't good enough, that I didn't belong in a room like this, that my only future was serving others. So I served, I waited tables, I built, I studied, and when no one believed in me, I believed in myself. The applause started slow, but it built. It spread. And when it filled the atrium, I didn't feel victorious. I felt whole. After the announcement, I met with the legal team. The whistleblower's tip had been detailed and damning. Dozens of shell payments routed through marketing consulting firms that didn't exist. Celeste's name on over half the transfers. Amounts that added up to nearly $6.2 million siphoned over 4 years. She was detained later that afternoon. They tried to keep it quiet. They failed. Cameras caught her being led out of the building, still wearing the gold nameplate necklace that said VP. Reporters swarmed her. She said nothing, just pulled her designer coat tighter and kept walking. As for Henry, he disappeared from the building the second the press showed up. I heard through corporate channels that he tried to claim wrongful termination, but the contract Celeste filed on his behalf undercut any legal ground he had left. Poetic justice, served cold, by his own daughter. The last I heard, he was trying to liquidate some of his assets to cover Celeste's legal fees. Not out of fatherly love, though, just panic. If she went down for fraud, his name would follow. And the Delacroix name? It was already ruined. Days passed. Then came the message. A handwritten note. No return address. Just a folded envelope left with the front desk. Alina, I don't expect forgiveness, but I owe you the truth. I knew what Henry did to your scholarship. I let him. I was afraid, and I was wrong. You didn't just take back your future. You exposed all the lies we built our lives on. I hope you do better with what comes next than any of us ever did. Mom, I read it twice, then put it away. I didn't cry. Not this time. I just walked to the window of my office, looking out over the skyline, and breathed. This wasn't just revenge. This was reclamation, my life, my name, my worth. For every girl who's ever been told she was less. For every daughter who was silenced, overlooked, discarded. I didn't just prove them wrong. I made sure they'd never forget it. Comment the number 3 if you felt that ending and want to see more stories where karma hits this hard. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the next twist-filled tale. See you in the next story.